Now, the acting president, Yemi Osinbajo, on Thursday signed an executive order to back the voluntary asset and income declaration scheme. Osinbajo signed the executive order during the formal launch of the VAIDS scheme at the Presidential Villa, Abuja. Now, speaking during the signing, the acting president said the new initiative is targeted at increasing tax awareness and compliance, as well as grant taxpayers a time-limited opportunity to regularize their tax status without penalty. Let's watch this.
Governors, members from the National Assembly and Diplomatic Corps, ministers as well as heads of parastatals were all gathered in this hall just before the arrival of the acting president, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. The Minister of Finance first made it clear that the government is changing status quo on the current tax regime, which currently stands at 6%, one of the lowest in the world.
The size of government budget, both state and local, is not big enough to serve the needs of this nation. It isn't because there isn't enough money. It is because there isn't enough money coming in to government. And that is what we are here today to correct.
The need to hold the government more accountable is drummed up by the acting president as he signs an executive order backing the implementation of the voluntary asset and income declaration scheme, an initiative to checkmate tax evasion.
The scheme will operate from July the 1st, 2017 until the 31st of March 2018. It will be supported by an executive order. VAIDS will offer a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to those in default to regularize their tax affairs. In exchange for full and honest declaration, taxpayers will receive immunity from prosecution, forgiveness of penalty and interest that is due on unpaid taxes, and the full assurance that all information provided will remain confidential.
The level of non-compliance of tax payment across the country suggests a problem demanding a crucial solution, hence the declaration.
Every Thursday, starting from today and for the next 1 year, will be declared Tax Thursday. We expect the FIRS and every state government will organize sensitization events that will raise awareness of the tax system and result in massive enrollment of new taxpayers.
It was also disclosed that only 214 Nigerians pay tax of 20 million naira or more each year. State governors promises a scale-up of that figure.
We need to rethink how we're going to get money to take responsibility of Nigerians, and Nigerians also have this government. So therefore, from the side of we governors, we are ready to give all the support needed for this program to succeed.
Nigeria has joined a global movement called the Automatic Convention, which comes into effect in 2018 to tackle illicit financial flows. 14 million, that's the total number of Nigerians currently paying tax. Well, the small figure is the reason behind the recreation of the tax-paying culture by the government to essentially secure more development for Nigeria. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
All right, joining me now to talk more on this is a fellow, Chartered Institute of Taxation and the editor, Joint Tax Board Newsletter, Mr. Chukwemeka Eze. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Eze. Right, what do you make of this whole initiative of, let's call it tax amnesty?
It's a global, there is a global movement this time around to ensure that taxpayers who have been recalcitrant should come within the tax net. We need increased revenue, and if we must get increased revenue, if you depend on applying the tax laws strictly by punishing people, dragging them to courts, many of these matters will be in courts for a very long time. So when the push comes to the shove, governments in the various parts of the world, in various tax jurisdictions, they consider what we call tax amnesty. You recall that India had it recently, just last year, and they were able to make about $10 billion and brought in about 65,000 people into their tax net, which wouldn't have been the situation if they didn't do Indonesia did the same. They got about $10 billion and brought many people into the tax net. Ghana even has a legislation to that effect. South Africa has what you call the voluntary program on tax amnesty. So basically Nigeria is taking the cue from there. Nigeria has organized this, and I'm sure that if you look at the strength is that this budget must be funded. If this budget must be funded not strictly on borrowing and on oil proceeds, then you have to increase the internally generated revenue. How do you improve it? Without bringing more people to the tax base, knowing that our GDP tax ratio to GDP ratio is about 6%, and we need to increase it. So basically, you need a measure that will bring more people into the tax net, and with the same measure, you increase revenue. With increased revenue, you can fund the budget. With increased revenue, which with tax amnesty will reduce the illicit flow of funds, which is persisting in many tax jurisdictions. You remember the Panama Papers. Immediately that happened, and India discovered that about 500 Indians were having their money offshore. They had to bring in tax amnesty. So, and they have generated a lot of money through that. So Nigeria is trying to emulate this particular concept, which has worked in many places, is emulating it so that it will work in Nigeria.
Okay, it's all about revenue generation. Now, looking at the time frame, just 9 months, is that enough? Do you think Nigerians would actually respond?
Nigerians will respond. Some countries, they have 3 months, some 6 months. So 9 months is elastic, and any serious person should use the 9 months, because ordinarily, you know, under our constitution, you are supposed to declare your income honestly, Section 26A of the 1999 Constitution. And be that as it may, if you are given 9 months to come on board, remember within these 9 months, you will not be subjected to tax audit. And after the 9 months, there will be naming and shaming. So basically, 9 months is sufficient, duration-wise is sufficient for any taxpayer. And basically, you know, there will be waiver of penalty and interest. For instance, the tax liability is 100 million. And you know, by way of calculation, the penalty 10% will be 110. If you calculate the interest, that will be 16.5 million. That means your bill ordinarily should be 126.5 million, but you are now made to pay 100 million. So 26 million yanked off. So any serious person will. In any case, you mustn't pay at once. You can meet the Federal Inland Revenue Service or any of the Internal Revenue Service of the states or Federal Capital Territory that is involved and agree on modus. You can scale it, pay first installment, pay second, but it has to be by agreement.
Now, but do you think the government has the wherewithal to actually implement this scheme, looking at the fact that Nigeria does not really have a good database, and of course the institutions that are even going to enforce this, have they been restructured?
I think as we speak now, the government is currently training 7,500 community tax liaison officers, and when you spread that within the 768 local governments and 6 area councils, you discover that you have an average of, should I say, 100 per local government. So if you use 100 people to gather intelligence on companies or on individuals, there is no way within 9 months they won't bring all the relevant information. Because many of those people will come within those areas and they know who is who. So the government has gone beyond what we are thinking, because some of the softwares are already on the ground. All the while they kept quiet, they've been working. So don't think that the government is doing the softwares are there. With respect to those that have an international flavor, like the multinational companies, the government has employed an international tracking and asset, forensic and asset tracking company that can track them. So in terms of gathering information beyond the shores, the government is already a signatory to the convention, the various conventions, especially the Convention on Mutual Administrative Assistance in Tax Matters, which allows the government to get information from other countries. So even if when you run to another country or you have investment in another country, the government will liaise with the tax agency to get all relevant information about you. So the government is actually ready, but definitely, you know, we have a capacity issue, but it's not as bad as we used to have it. Things have changed now. All right.
Now, as you did mention, Nigeria's tax to GDP ratio, of course, is one of the lowest. That's about 6%. Now, if this initiative succeeds, do you see Nigeria moving closer to other developed economies?
Basically, we may not move closer to other developed economies, but it will be better than yesterday. If we can move close to South Africa, although it's a developed economy, but if we can move close to it, that would be good. But I see Nigeria, with the changes, with what is on the ground now. Remember, there is a memorandum of interaction, or even in respect of audits, between the FIROS and State Internal Revenue Service. Now, before, we didn't have that. A State Internal Revenue Service will send auditors to your firm. You produce a different account to them. Then Federal Land Revenue Service will come. You give them a different account. You hide your bank account, and it will become difficult to trace it. But all that is gone with the BVN. Your account can be traced, and under the Personal Income Tax Amendment Act of 2011, there is a burden on the bank to disclose your bank details. So you can no longer hide. In fact, this day, the Inland Revenue Service and Internal Revenue Service might have received the information concerning your account details in advance, even before inviting you. And if it has to do with outside the country, we have the internationally agreed standard on exchange of information. Sure. In that regard, that exchange of information allows other countries to standard on transparency and exchange of information. That's what it is called. And Nigeria is part of the global forum on exchange of information. So basically, there is nowhere to hide.
All right. Now, Mr. Eze, just a quick one before I let you go. What role, in all of this, what role do you see the state government and the local governments playing?
The role they will play is that with this memorandum of understanding between the federal and the states, so information you give in one place will be passed on to the other place. So if you think that you give a different information to federal, then you run to your state, no matter how remote, and go and supply a separate type of information. You will be mistaken. You'll be held liable for tax evasion. So basically, this is the time to tell all the truth. And it is the time for Nigerians to know in advance that there is no hiding place and begin to be honest in supplying information to the tax authority. And when they do so, they will now insist that the tax process will be used for the development of the country, knowing that there is a connection between tax payment and social responsibility and provision of social developmental infrastructure.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Eze, for sharing your thoughts with us on this.